Good morning, everyone. My name is Ailsa, and today I'm going to talk about my favourite books of 2015. This is the first video I'm making from my new flat in London, which is quite exciting. One day when it's not quite so messy, I'll maybe show you around, but for now, I'm here. I've got my garden out the window, which is really nice. I've got lots of lovely light coming in, and that's largely irrelevant. My top 4 books of the year, my favourite books, the ones that really stood out to me as being ones that would stick with me for a while afterwards, just generally standout books. I have A Darker Shade of Magic by Victoria Schwab, or V.E. Schwab, I think she calls herself on that book. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir, and Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. The first one, A Darker Shade of Magic, I read back in the summer, and I absolutely love this book. I haven't read anything by Victoria before. It was one of those books that straight away I started reading it and I got sucked straight in. It's a fantasy novel about a young man who can move between worlds, and there are 3 different worlds that he can move between. There were 4, and each world has different kind of levels of magic in it. The 4th world that isn't really here anymore is he calls Black London, and it doesn't really exist anymore. And over the course of the book you kind of find out why and what sort of things caused that. Only very, very few people can move things between the worlds, and he's one of them, the main character. He is not allowed to take things from worlds to each other, but he does, and near the start of the book he is asked to take something through and essentially is set up, gets caught, and the story goes from there. It's also told from the point of view of a young woman who's from a different world of him, and their paths cross and they end up going on this big adventure together because of the consequences of him being caught with the object from the other world. And it just generally was a fantasy novel that really stood out to me. It was quite different from other things. It was a new idea for me. But I love the way the characters interacted. I love the setup for the future stories. There were little hints and things, and I really want to find out what happens next. Mostly this one was on here for just how much it just picked me up, and I got totally sucked into it. I read it really quick. It just carried me along with it. The next one, All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This is about a blind girl growing up in Paris during the kind of build-up to World War II, and then as France is being invaded by the Nazi army, she and her father have to leave the city, go to live with her great uncle who lives in a town on the coast. And it's a war story. It's about her experience with it, but obviously it's different because she's blind. You get different experiences because of that. And I really liked seeing the world, as it were, seeing from her point of view, from the blind girl's point of view, and experiencing more of what that would be like. The town gets bombed, and obviously she doesn't know what's happening there. That's not a spoiler. You find out about it on the first page. Yeah, in general, it's very good. And intertwined with that is the story of a boy who, at the start of the book, is in an orphanage, and he is really good at building radios and getting them fixed. And through this, he is brought to a special kind of boarding school where boys are being trained to be part of the German army and massively indoctrinated. And his point of view is really interesting to see over his life, over his young part of his life, how propaganda comes into the world and how the world that he experiences changes from when he's very young to as he grows up, things getting more and more serious. And that was really interesting. So the way the story is told is that it jumps back to have large chapters from the past, from them growing up, to the present, which is in this little town where Marie-Laure goes to on the coast of France. or it maybe gives you a day or an hour at a time, interspersed amongst the chapters of the present day, which is in the middle of the war. So you know fairly early on that they both end up in this town, and over the course of the book you see how their paths take them there, and then you eventually get caught up to the present day of where the story is kind of starting from, and you see where the events go. And I just loved the structure of that, and how it came about, and seeing how these two people did get to be in the same place, and what kind of decisions they'd make then, and where they would go. That was All That We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, was my second book of the year last year. Book 3, as I said, is An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir. This one is another fantasy book. It is set in another world. It's sort of a deserty setting. There's this city in the middle, and most of the kind of empire there is ruled by kind of military people, and there is a school where people are being trained to be soldiers, and they start when they're very young, and they go up to essentially where you would graduate from high school when you're 18. So Elias is a soldier there, and he's just about to graduate, but he's planning on running away. And that's where he is at the start of the story, and then things happen that mean he can't go through with his plan. The Empire is treating the people who used to live in this area, who traditionally live in this area, as slaves, as like a lesser people essentially, and the soldiers are trained to like keep them down in their place, these pesky little inferior people and horrible stuff like that. And Elias doesn't want to be part of that. He doesn't think it's right. He has never got into the kind of indoctrinated mind frame that everyone is being trained to be part of, so he's trying to run away. The story is also told by Leia, who is one of these slave people. Near the start of the book, her brother is kidnapped and taken away because he's been drawing something in the compound of the Empire people that he shouldn't have been. And Leia doesn't really understand the significance of what he was drawing, or why he was doing it, or how he got into it. But she goes to find some people who are the resistance and want to get their help. Over the book, you see a lot of things changing in this Empire world. You see the decisions that Elias in particular is trying to make as he's trying to make choices that will change things, that will make the status quo more even. He wants there to be a lot more equality. He doesn't want to be part of this empire anymore. He wants to change that, just get away from it. And you see, as he tries to make choices in the situations he's in that will change things, he goes through some really horrible stuff. I was crying on the tube while I read part of this, just for the heartbreaking scenario that he ends up in at one point. It was such a moving book. It was, although it's set in like a foreign world, I could really feel for these characters, and it is about like how you make the right decision in horrible circumstances, and someone having to get up and be that person who says, no, this is not right. And I think that's what I loved about it. I loved how moving it was, and the big scenario that's kind of set up, the big storylines that get put into place. I don't want to read the sequel to this, which is coming out later this year, I think, hopefully, so that will be really good. The final book that made it onto my top standout books of the year, it's one that I read at the end of November, beginning of December, and that is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. This is a book, if you haven't heard much about it, which I'm sure loads of you have, set in England and in the present day, and it's about a school for magic. And it's about Simon, who is supposedly the chosen one. He is meant to save people from the bad guy, who is the insidious humdrum, that no one really knows what this humdrum is, or how it's sucking magic out of the world and leaving kind of dead spots, empty spots where you can't do magic. And everyone's trying to figure out what's going on with that. But Simon has never felt like a chosen one. He's not particularly good at magic. he's good at using a sword, but that's not a magical power. He's never really been particularly strongly magical unless it's sort of in a very uncontrolled way. When he loses his temper, things kind of go wrong around him, and his magic is very kind of, it sort of rubs the wrong way against people. It makes them feel uncomfortable around him when he uses the magic, and it can be quite dangerous. He's got fires and things in the past, so he really tries to avoid being put into situations where it might like escape from him. He's not very good at controlling it. But he doesn't want to go off and be a chosen one. He wants to finish school and get on with things. He wants to fix things with his girlfriend because there's problems there, and he wants to deal with his arch nemesis, Baz, who is also his roommate. And I just loved the way this story went. It is, in a lot of ways, a romance story, but it's not just a romance story. But I loved the romance elements of it. I love that it's told from different points of view. Simon and Baz are the two main narrators of the story, but you also get occasional bits from Penny, who is his best friend, and Agatha, who is the sort of girlfriend that he's having problems with. And I loved what that brought to it, getting different parts from different points of view. It was mainly the love story aspect of that I really enjoyed, and the magic of the world that Rainbow Rowell creates in it. It's, everyone will say, oh, it's copying this, that, and the other, but it's a magical world. There's always stories that overlap. There are elements that are always going to overlap if you have magical worlds. So like fantasy worlds, there's always things that are going to be the same. So I disagree with critics on that one. I love the world building that Rainbow Rowell has in this one book. She makes it a very clear picture in just one story. It is a standalone novel, and I did like that. It's complete in itself, and yeah, I really liked that book. So those are my 4 best books of the year, and I can't wait to see what 2016 brings. If you've read any of these books, feel free to leave comments, talk to me about them down below. Let me know your favourite books of the year, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!